The theft of tomorrow. The monsoon rain drummed against the tin roof of the relief camp, but Nadia barely noticed. Her hands moved swiftly, wrapping bandages around a child's wounded arm while humming softly to calm the frightened boy. 3 weeks had passed since the floods devastated the northern villages, and she'd volunteered immediately, leaving behind her comfortable life in Lahore to help those who had nothing. Teaching had always been Nadia's calling. But in moments like these, she discovered something deeper within herself, a fierce need to serve, to give, to heal the broken pieces of the world one person at a time. Her parents would have been proud. The thought brought both warmth and sadness. They'd passed away within months of each other the previous year, leaving behind a modest 2-story house in the old quarter of Lahore and some savings they'd accumulated through decades of frugal living. "Your brother will take care of everything," her mother had whispered on her deathbed, squeezing Nadia's hand. "He's the eldest. He'll do right by you both." Faisal had always been the ambitious one, sharp-suited, quick-talking, constantly chasing the next big business opportunity. While Nadia chose education and service, Faisal chose commerce and connections. Their parents had loved them equally, though sometimes Nadia wondered if they'd worried more about her brother's restless hunger for success. Before leaving for the flood relief mission, she'd sat with Faisal in their parents' house discussing the inheritance over chai. "We'll handle everything when you return," he'd assured her, his smile smooth as silk. "Focus on your volunteering. The paperwork can wait. This house isn't going anywhere." She'd trusted him completely. Why wouldn't she? He was her brother, her only remaining family. Now, as she finished treating the last patient for the evening, her phone buzzed with messages she'd been too busy to check. The first was from her neighbor, Mrs. Qureshi. "Beta, there are strange people at your house. Moving trucks. I tried calling you." Nadia's heart lurched. She scrolled frantically through more messages, each one painting a darker picture. The house was being cleared, sold. Her childhood home, her parents' legacy was being emptied like a shell. Her fingers trembled as she dialed Faisal's number. It rang once, twice, then went to voicemail. She tried again, and again. Each time, the same automatic message, his voice cheerful and impersonal. "Leave a message after the tone." "Faisal, what's happening to the house?" "Call me immediately." Her voice cracked with panic. By the time she finally reached him the next morning, her stomach had twisted into knots. His voice was casual, almost bored. "Oh, that, I sold it. Good price, too. The market was perfect. You sold it without discussing it with me?" "That was our parents' home. Our home." Nadia could barely breathe. "I'm the executor of the estate, Nadia. I made a business decision. The money's better invested in my new venture. Don't worry, I'll give you your share eventually." But she knew. In the silence that followed, in the way he rushed off the phone, in the hollow feeling spreading through her chest, she knew he'd betrayed her. The documents were likely forged, her signature faked. He'd stolen not just money or property, but her past, her memories, her parents' final gift. Standing in the muddy camp, surrounded by people who'd lost everything to floods, Nadia realized she'd lost everything too, but to something far more painful than nature's fury. She'd been betrayed by blood. That night, she made a decision. She wouldn't fight, wouldn't drag her brother through courts or confrontations. Instead, she would do something harder. She would build a new life from nothing, and she would build it better than before. Seeds in foreign soil. The humidity of Kuala Lumpur hit Nadia like a wall when she stepped off the plane. 6 months had passed since Faisal's betrayal, 6 months of applications, interviews, and sleepless nights in borrowed rooms. Now she clutched a work visa and a teaching contract at an international school serving refugee children. The school was nothing like her previous workplace. Housed in a converted warehouse in the city's outskirts, it smelled of fresh paint and hope. Children from Myanmar, Syria, Afghanistan, and Somalia filled cramped classrooms, their eyes hungry for knowledge that might change their futures. "You must be Miss Nadia," said the principal, a warm-faced woman named Mrs. Lim. "Welcome. I should warn you, we run on passion more than budget here." Nadia smiled genuinely for the first time in months. That's exactly what I need. Among the staff, she noticed a quiet man sketching building designs during lunch breaks. Tariq was a Syrian architect whose credentials meant nothing in his new country. War had stolen his career, his home, and his family. Now he taught mathematics to children who reminded him of the nieces and nephews he'd left behind. They first spoke when Nadia found him reinforcing a wobbly bookshelf in her classroom. The structure is weak, he explained in soft-spoken English, his hands measuring angles with practiced precision. But we can make it stronger with what we have. Something in those words resonated beyond carpentry. Over shared meals in the school's modest canteen, they traded stories of loss. Tarek spoke of Damascus, of buildings he'd designed that now existed only in photographs. Nadia told him about Lahore, about parents she'd loved, and a brother who'd chosen greed over family. Pain either breaks us or rebuilds us, Tariq said one evening as they watched children play in the courtyard. I think we're both the rebuilding type. Their friendship deepened into something neither had expected to find again. Love born not from romance, but from mutual understanding, from shared purpose. They began dreaming together, sketching plans on napkins for a better school, a proper facility where refugee children could truly thrive. Mrs. Lim caught them planning one afternoon and surprised them with news. A small grant had been approved. It's not much, she said, but it's a start. If you two want to expand our program, I'll support you completely. Nadia and Tarek worked tirelessly. She developed curriculum while he designed efficient, beautiful spaces using minimal resources. They wrote proposals, contacted donors, and spoke at community gatherings. The school grew from one warehouse to 3 buildings. Local families began sending their children alongside refugee students, creating a diverse community united by learning. 2 years after arriving in Malaysia, Nadia stood beside Tariq at a simple ceremony by the sea. They exchanged vows with Mrs. Lim as witness, promising to build not just a life together, but a legacy of education and hope. There was no expensive wedding, no family drama, just 2 survivors choosing to create something beautiful from their scars. That night, as they walked along the beach, Tariq took her hand. Do you ever think about him? Your brother? Nadia watched waves erase footprints in the sand. Sometimes. But I've learned that forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about choosing not to let the past poison your future. She didn't know then that those words would soon be tested in ways she couldn't imagine. Roots growing. Deep 5 years transformed everything. What began as a small refugee school blossomed into the Horizon Educational Foundation, operating across Malaysia and expanding into Indonesia. Nadia's vision and Tariq's architectural genius created learning centers that were both functional and inspiring, spaces where the poorest children felt valued and capable. The foundation attracted attention from international organizations. Nadia found herself speaking at conferences, sharing her model of inclusive education that didn't just teach subjects, but healed trauma. Tariq designed each new building to incorporate light, nature, and beauty, proving that dignity shouldn't be a luxury reserved for the wealthy. Their home was modest, despite the foundation's success. They lived in a simple apartment above their main school, surrounded by children's laughter and the smell of Mrs. Lim's cooking from next door. Money that came to the foundation went directly back into programs, scholarships, teacher training, counseling services for traumatized children. We could live better, Tariq sometimes joked, gesturing at their second-hand furniture. We live perfectly, Nadia would respond, pulling him close. We have purpose, love, and enough. What else matters? Their work caught the eye of journalists documenting social enterprises. A feature story in an international magazine showed Nadia teaching a class of diverse children, her face radiant with joy. The article praised her journey from personal loss to global impact, though it carefully avoided naming her brother or detailing the betrayal. Nadia had insisted on that. This story was about moving forward, not dwelling on pain. What she didn't know was that back in Lahore, that magazine lay on a coffee table in a crumbling office where Faisal sat surrounded by debt notices and legal summons. His real estate empire had collapsed spectacularly. The quick money he'd made from selling his parents' house had seeded ventures built on shortcuts and shady deals. Construction projects abandoned halfway, investors defrauded, permits forged. It all came crashing down when authorities finally investigated. Now, Faisal faced bankruptcy and potential prison time. His wife had left, taking their daughter. Friends vanished. The luxury apartment was seized. He'd become exactly what he'd always feared: a failure, alone and desperate. Scrolling through his phone in his nearly empty office, he searched frantically for aid organizations, anything that might help him escape Pakistan and start over. That's when he found the Horizon Educational Foundation's website. They had programs helping people rebuild their lives, training for new careers. He filled out an application using a fake name, claiming to be a desperate man seeking a fresh start. It wasn't entirely a lie. He attached a photo that barely resembled his former polished self: unshaven, exhausted, broken. The response came within days. A position was available for facilities maintenance at their main campus in Kuala Lumpur. Basic salary, accommodation provided, a chance to learn and grow. For someone who'd once closed million-dollar deals, it was humiliating. But he had no choice. As Faisal boarded a plane to Malaysia, he had no idea he was flying toward the sister. He'd betrayed, the inheritance he'd stolen, and the reckoning he'd spent 5 years outrunning. When the mighty fall, Faisal's hands trembled as he mopped the corridor of the Horizon Foundation's main building. 3 weeks had passed since his arrival, 3 weeks of humbling labor that left his back aching and his pride shattered. The man, who once wore Italian suits, now wore maintenance overalls with his fake name stitched on the pocket. Farhan. The work was menial but honest. Cleaning classrooms, fixing broken desks, maintaining the gardens that Tariq had designed with such care. Faisal worked alongside other men rebuilding their lives: a former soldier, a recovering addict, a man who'd lost his family to illness. Their stories made him realize his wasn't unique. Many people fell. Few chose to climb back up with integrity. What surprised him most was the atmosphere. Despite limited resources, joy permeated everything. Teachers greeted maintenance staff warmly. Children thanked him for cleaning their classrooms. The foundation's director, a woman whose face he glimpsed only in passing, had created something remarkable: a place where every person mattered regardless of their role or past. One afternoon, while repairing a window in the administrative building, Faisal overheard a conversation. The foundation's founders were discussing expansion plans with donors. A male voice with a slight Arabic accent spoke about architectural designs, while a female voice, clear, educated, passionate, outlined educational goals. Something about that woman's voice stirred a memory he couldn't place. The cadence, the thoughtful pauses, the way she pronounced certain words. It haunted him through his evening chores. Mrs. Lim, the elderly woman who managed staff, noticed his distraction. "You're doing good work, Farhan. Keep this up, and you might move into a teaching assistant role. Our director believes in giving people second chances." "Why?" Faisal asked. "Why help people like us?" Mrs. Lim smiled knowingly. "Because someone once betrayed her deeply. Instead of becoming bitter, she chose to become better. That's the kind of person Miss Nadia is." The name hit him like a physical blow. Nadia, his sister's name. But it couldn't be. What were the odds? Malaysia had many Nadias. He was being paranoid, seeing connections where none existed. Yet that night, unable to sleep in his shared dormitory room, Faisal searched the Foundation's website on his phone. There, on the About Us page, was a photograph he'd managed to avoid until now. His sister. Older, wiser, more beautiful than he remembered, standing beside a kind-faced man with graying temples, her husband, the caption said, both smiling in front of a school filled with children. The phone slipped from his shaking hands. All this time, he'd been working for her. She'd given him a job, a chance to rebuild, without knowing who he was. Or did she know? Was this elaborate kindness actually elaborate revenge? Shame washed over him in waves. He'd stolen her inheritance and fled, leaving her with nothing. She'd built an empire of compassion. He'd built a house of cards that collapsed. Now he cleaned the floors of her success. Faisal didn't sleep that night. By morning, he'd made a decision. He had to confess, face her, accept whatever judgment came. He owed her that much, even if it cost him everything again. The harvest of grace. Nadia was reviewing scholarship applications when Mrs. Lim knocked on her office door. "There's a maintenance worker who urgently needs to speak with you. Says it's personal." "Send him in," Nadia replied, not looking up from her papers. The door opened and closed. Footsteps approached slowly, hesitantly. When they stopped, Nadia glanced up and froze. Her brother stood before her, unrecognizable yet unmistakable. Gone was the arrogant businessman in designer clothes. This man wore work overalls, his face lined with exhaustion and something else, genuine remorse. His eyes, once sharp with ambition, now brimmed with tears. "Nadia," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." For a long moment she couldn't speak. 5 years of building a new life, of choosing forgiveness over bitterness, of healing, all of it seemed to collapse into this single moment. Tariq appeared in the doorway, sensing tension, but she waved him in. "He deserved to witness this. You knew?" Faisal asked, his voice breaking. "You knew it was me and you still gave me a job?" "I didn't know," Nadia said quietly. "Not until Mrs. Lim mentioned your real name in a security report yesterday. By then you'd been here 3 weeks. You could have thrown me out." "I could have." Nadia stood, walking to the window where children played in the courtyard below. But what would that teach them? What would it teach you? That people can't change? That mistakes define us forever? Faisal collapsed into a chair, sobbing. "I stole everything from you. The house, the money, your memories. I justified it as business, as being smart, but I was just greedy and cruel. I destroyed my life anyway. Lost everything. I deserve to lose it." Tariq spoke for the first time, his voice gentle. "We've all lost things. I lost my country, my career, my family to war. Nadia lost her inheritance to betrayal, but loss doesn't have to be the end of the story. It can be the beginning of understanding what actually matters." Nadia turned to face her brother. "For 5 years, I've forgiven you every single day. Not because you deserved it, but because I deserved peace. Carrying anger would have poisoned everything I built. But Faisal, forgiveness doesn't mean pretending it didn't hurt. It means choosing not to let that hurt define my future." "What happens now?" Faisal asked, unable to meet her eyes. "Now you keep working. You keep learning. You keep becoming a better person than the one who betrayed his sister." Nadia's voice was firm but kind. "If you want to earn back your place in my life, it won't be through apologies. It'll be through actions day after day, proving that you've changed. I don't deserve this chance. None of us deserve grace," Tariq interjected. "But grace transforms us anyway. That's what makes it grace." Over the following months, Faisal remained at the foundation, no longer hiding behind a false name. He worked harder than anyone, arriving early and leaving late. He attended counseling sessions the foundation provided. Slowly, painfully, he began to rebuild not just his skills, but his character. One evening, as the sun set over Kuala Lumpur, Nadia and Faisal sat in the garden Tariq had designed. Between them lay 5 years of silence, betrayal, and separate journeys. "I'll never get back what I took from you," Faisal said. "The house, the money, the time." "No," Nadia agreed. "But you've given me something more valuable, proof that my choice to forgive was right. That people can change. That redemption is real, not just a nice idea." She reached over and squeezed her brother's hand, not forgetting, not erasing the past, but choosing connection over bitterness. Around them, children from a dozen countries played together, learning, growing, healing. The Horizon Foundation stood as a testament to what could be built from nothing when love replaced greed, when service replaced selfishness, when forgiveness became not just a word, but a way of life. Tariq joined them, carrying chai he'd made in the style of both Damascus and Lahore, a blend of their pasts creating something new. To new beginnings, he said, raising his cup. To lessons learned, Faisal added, his voice humble. To gardens that grow, Nadia finished, even in the hardest soil. And in that garden of forgiveness, 3 broken people sat together, not as they were, but as they'd chosen to become.